Hi everyone. We were waiting a couple of minutes for more attendees, but now we are ready to start. First, thanks everyone for joining to this webinar where we will talk about what is the best software quality strategy for a startup with a limited or non QA team, which is a pretty common case and it's pretty difficult to handle at some point. So the idea is to talk about different options and what we have seen in the industry and make recommendations for your use case. So thanks everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I think we have people from different time zones. So thanks again. I'm Ivan Barajas and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mood Labs. So let's start then. So the goals of this webinar are to first to understand the importance of software quality from early on. That's one of the goals here. Another goal we have for today is analyze the phases of software quality in a fast-growing startup. Also, we will talk about how to tackle software quality in every phase. So we will see how the different needs of the startups and companies on QA, how they evolve and what we can do to tackle these needs and how happy customers. And also the cost benefit of different strategies that tackle software quality, because there are different ways of doing software quality in different phases of our startups. So there are always trade-offs. You know, there is no free lunch in any solution. So we will talk about cost benefit of different strategies. So first, I mean, this is about your learning, and that's the main goal here. But a couple of notes about me, just so you know who I am. Ivan Barajas. I'm from Mexico, from a small town in Jalisco State. I grew up there. Then I moved to US to work 10 years ago, to work for EMC at the time in North Carolina, Dell, doing a lot of QA, every role in QA. I have been doing QA for 17 years now in my career. Everything from manual testing, architecture, test automation. So I have seen a lot of things on the QA space. And when I came also, I came to North Carolina because I studied graduate school at UNC Quinnipiac, and I currently live in Raleigh, North Carolina with my fiancé and several plans. We have a lot of plans. So, okay, let's get started so we make a good use of your time. So first, this is a basic, I know, but let's talk a little bit about what is software quality, right? It's a basic, but let's get in the same frame of mind here. So the ISTQB, which is one of the organizations that are experts on software testing, they say that software quality is when the totality of the functionality and features of software of a software product satisfy the stated or implied needs, right? And that's the formal definition, but really, what do we care about as startup founders, as CEOs, CTOs, and VPs of engineering? What do we care about really is not this. What we care about is what the customers say, right? Really, software quality is when our customer says this software works. That is really what we care about. We don't care about these formal definitions. We want our customers to say the software works and I'm having a good experience. So why do we want software quality, right? We want software quality for a couple of reasons. I mean, we are in fast-growing companies. So one thing is we have customers. We want to avoid churn because in 2020, Forbes interviewed 1,000 customers and they found that 61% of these customers were extremely or very willing to switch a company for a bad customer experience. 61% were sure that they will leave a company for bad customer experience with is what we provide with our software, right? A customer and user experience. 35% more say that they were somewhat willing to leave. So we are talking about 96% of risk of customers and users leaving a product or a company because they have a bad experience, right? And software quality is good experience. So only 4% said that they would be unwilling to switch. They might give another chance. So the risk of customer churn when the customers start finding bugs is huge, and we know, right? And also related to this, conversion, right? We are doing demos, we are doing free trials, and when the customers see this, where they find defects, if we are doing a demo and we find a defect, disaster. If the customer is in a trial and they found defects, disaster, right? So quality is really, really important in life of growing companies and startups because churn and conversions. So let's start, let's make this a little bit more active. So let's do a quick survey here. How many bugs do you think you have per 1,000 lines of code? We just posted there a poll. Please participate there, and let's see. Let's give one minute to participate in the poll, and we will continue. All right. Let's give 5 more seconds, and we will continue with this poll. All right. We have the poll. The results are here. So as you can see now in the screen, 43% said that 20 to 30 bugs per 1,000 lines of code. 57% said 50 to 60 bugs. So yeah, let's see what we really found here. So the average bugs per 1,000 lines of code, according to Carnegie Mellon University, it's 20 to 30 bugs for 1,000 lines of code. So yeah, we got a good quantity of attendees were successful finding the answer. So yeah. So we always have bugs, right? So it's impossible to avoid. So how do we ensure the best quality despite these statistics and bugs? Okay, let's continue then. So let's talk about fast-growing companies, software quality assurance. So this is what happens as we grow. As we grow, we first develop the code. We have 1, 2, 3 developers. We want to build a product. We are a startup building something based on feedback, based on providing value, pains, understanding customer pains. At this phase, what we want is just to get something on the market, to test the ideas, get an MVP going. So we test it pretty rarely. So we in phase 2, so we start growing. Maybe we have 5 to 10 developers. We do unit testing from the beginning, from phase 1. Usually this is something that is common. Unit testing, maybe some testing by the founders. In the phase 2, when we are a little larger, we might hire one QA maybe, or the founders are doing the testing, the developers are doing testing. Suddenly, after a lot of work, we find product market fit, and we start growing pretty fast, and the customers start finding bugs. We realize that just unit testing, some manual testing is not enough, and customers start finding bugs and complaining about our product, and we start having some churn, and we start converting less customers because the quality is not appropriate, right? So this is something common that we see. A little more detail regarding these phases that we see in the industry in fast-growing companies. So the first phase, we can say it's around less than 5 engineers. At this point, software QA and software testing is unit testing by the developers, and the founders doing maybe some limited manual and functional testing, and that's it, right? We grow a little bit more. We go 5 to 10 engineers. Now we maybe hire one QA, one person in charge of testing. A lot of companies want to avoid start hiring QAs, and they just hire more developers, but they end up dedicating 1 or 2 days of the sprint of the developers to test, right? So at the end, even if you are doing test-driven development or other techniques, you end up at some point learning that the testing was not enough, right? So at some point, the companies start in this phase 5 to 10, they just start considering seriously hiring a QA, something that was avoided until now. So now, between 10 and 30 engineers, now you have maybe at this point, you say, okay, one QA, this QA was doing unit testing, some function, sorry, the developers were doing unit testing in the previous phase, some manual functional with the QA, and some play with automation, right? Because in the phase 5 to 10, you have one QA, he or she, they have enough work to do just manual testing, so they don't have time for automation. So as you grow over 10, you say, okay, now we need to automate because we have the QA doing 3 days of regression testing every sprint. So this is unsustainable. So now we go to the next phase, 10 to 30 engineers. At this point, the average company decides to hire a SDET, software developer in test, or test automation engineer. Also, they hire 2, 3, or 4 more QAs that do it manually because they have been growing the code, they have been implementing technical debt, and they want to catch up with the bugs. So at this point, the average company has 2, 3 manual testers and 1 automation engineer. But at this point, the companies decide to assign this automation engineer to automate tests. They start a project, an initiative. Sometimes they use local tools. Other times they use open source tools like Selenium or Cypress. Cypress is used by developers, sometimes for test automation engineers. But at the end, they realize that they are going pretty slow with these tools, especially with Selenium and Cypress, because they have to develop a whole infrastructure. They have to implement different models in order to make test automation efficient. And some realize they cannot do it all, and they start doing outsourcing. So that's the regular path at this stage. Then in the next stage, once you grow above 30 engineers, maybe you have 6 to 8, 5 to 8 Scrum teams. So now a lot of companies, something in addition to the last phase, is a lot of companies decide to build their own framework. They say, yeah, the tools in the market, open source, low-code tools, all the tools in the market, they are very general. We need something for us. So they just start developing their own framework. But what does this mean? If you start developing your own framework, this means that you need to hire maybe now 5 SDETs, and they just start designing your own framework or modifying one existing framework like Selenium. But you end up, in these cases, the companies end up with 2 teams. One that is building the product and one team that is building the automation product. So you end up with two products and twice the problems because also the framework has to be tested, has to be developed. So it's a pretty difficult situation as well that requires a lot of resources. So in the perfect world, we have to do all this, right? A lot of testing, functional, non-functional, integration, interface testing, user acceptance, security. It's a lot of things to do that it's pretty difficult to handle with so little time and resources, right? We will talk about some strategies, but this is what we want to achieve regarding quality at some point, but it's a lot. Also, in the perfect world, we want to do all the testing we mentioned in the previous slide in every sprint. So we want to do it every sprint. If we are building every week, every day, every 2 weeks, we need to have validation and verification of the software every sprint. So really, what are my options? We are seeing that QA, in this first part of the presentation, we saw that testing is important because if not, we will lose customers or we won't win customers. But testing is cumbersome. There are a lot of things to do. And even we want to avoid it with good software development techniques, great unit testing. At some point, as we scale, we always realize that we need more. So what are my options really here? One option is the traditional QA, right? We talk a little bit about this one, which is you start hiring QAs, fierce manual QAs. If you want to go directly to automation, you end up having manual and automation testing. But yeah, traditional QA, we start hiring QAs, at some point automation. The pros of this approach is you have a lot of control on what you want to test. If you have the money, you can hire more QAs and go a little bit faster. And you have the domain expertise in your team forever, right? Because they work for you. So you will teach them about your product and they will be experts on your product, which is good to have when you are testing and automating. And the cons, it's slow and expensive, right? Because if you want to hire QAs and grow your team, it takes a few months to find a good candidate, a few months to train them, and your speed will depend on how many people you hire, which is expensive. What's other option? Outsourcing. This is another option that we see in the market as companies grow. Usually, we have outsourcing in India or Europe. The pros is the cost. It's a lower cost. The cons are the time zone. Difficult to find a good partner. The time zone, in India and in Europe, 6 hours or 9 hours. So sometimes it's challenging to be joining a call at that time. Or if the companies are working in their time zone, the engineers are tired because they are working in our time zone, which is different from them, right? So that sometimes is challenging. And also it's difficult to transfer. At some point, as you grow your software stack and your company, you might want to take more ownership of certain processes like QA, and it turns to be difficult to transfer because all the knowledge is in the outsourcing partner, right? Another option is outsource in Latin America. With this one, we solved the issue of the time zone because it's the difference depending on where we are. It's assuming we are in the United States, the difference is lower, right? 2-3 hours before or after, depending on the country. So that's another option. So the pros and the cost, it's cheaper to source in India, Europe, or Latin America than hiring people in the US, usually. And the time zone, it's a pro, right? In Latin America, the cons, Is the difficult to find a good partner? Again, there are so many vendors, and there are good vendors and not so good vendors. So it's difficult to find a good partner. And again, the difficulty to transfer, because at the end, the outsourced team becomes the expert in your software. And if you want to transfer the testing and automation at some point, sometimes it's difficult to transfer. And also there is some outsourcing in the US. There are a few companies that do testing outsourcing in the US. Well, pros, the time zone and the language is perfect. Sometimes in other countries, we don't find perfect English skills that we would like to have, right? So time zone and language, but the cost is high. The difficulty to transfer continues to be a constant in the outsourcing model. So we will talk at the end, in a few slides, we will talk about what is recommended for each stage of the company. So yeah, we are right now talking about the different options. So this is outsourcing. Let's go to other option we have as we scale QA and our company. Another one is crowd testing. Crowd testing, there are different sites, the different companies that offer crowd testing in different manners, but in a nutshell, crowd testing is I post a project with my product, and different people in different parts of the world test it. There are different variations here. Sometimes it's more structured with a testing plan. Other times it's just like the Wild West. Crowd testers go ahead and test it. So there are different variations here, but in general, the pros is you can have exposure to different environments and testers. So yeah, exposure to different environments, like for example, if you are testing mobile, and you can have exposure to different devices with different OSs and different software in the mobile version. And real humans are using the software, right, and the apps if you are doing mobile. So that's a big pro in this scenario. Also, it's scalable. So you can say, oh, I want a project of 10 crowd testers, and you want to scale it to 50 in different countries, for example, when you need to test in different geographies. This is a good case for when you want to test in different geographies as well. And you can scale it pretty fast. But as I said, there are some cons. You lack control. It's pretty difficult to manage a good testing project with defined goals, a good strategy, because it becomes the Wild West as you scale. So it's the lack of control is huge, and also you are putting your product in different hands. Different security is also a concern here, and most of the times. Another option we have here is do it yourself. So do it yourself. With this, we refer to when you decide to maybe use an open source tool like a framework like Selenium or Cypress, start tailoring that for your use case. That's an option here. And also when you decide to build your own framework, so this has pros and cons as well. So pros, when you are using open source, is the tool is free. It's free because it's open source, right? But it's not free because you need to assign one engineer, 1 to 5, depending on your size or more, to learn the tool, learn the framework, create models, and make easy to use the framework to adapt it to you. So it's not free because it requires a lot of effort to get it going right. The good thing is once you invested in average 3 to 6 months of one person full time to set up your environment, after that, you already pay the cost, right? But we are talking about hiring someone that is an expert in these tools, having them full-time 3 to 6 months preparing the environment, and then you can start getting some value on test automation if you do it yourself in this way. So yeah, these are the cons. They need to be tailored to your use case, and they require high technical knowledge. Other option of do it yourself and the test automation is you can use low code or no code tools. The pros, they are easy to use. Almost anyone in your company can, with some technical knowledge, they still require a little bit of technical knowledge. They are easy to use. The cons, you still need one person at least dedicated to use the tool 1 or 2 days per week. And they need to have less technical knowledge that when you use open source and things like Selenium or Cypress, you need quite less, like I would say like 80% less, but still the low code and no code tools require some knowledge so you can create nice flows, automated flows, and yeah. So another option is build your own test framework. So this one, you can build exactly what you want if you are able to build it. But as we mentioned, you end up having 2 products. So when you build your own, test framework, you end up having your software product and your test automation framework product, which becomes twice the problem. I think there are questions here. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, please do questions if you have any questions. So I will answer it here now. So the most commonly used low code, no code tools. So there are different. There are Test.im is one that is very common. We have one, MookLabs. I mean, we're doing webinar, but we have MookTest. We call it MookTest Effortless. We have a low code, no code platform. Test.im is another one. Another common the first one that was used was Selenium IDE. So actually, they released the latest version recently, I believe. So that one is open source and you can be used. So all of those have pros and cons, but Selenium IDE, Test.im is low code, no code. MookTest, you can check it out as well. Other options are more in the enterprise level. MABL is another one, Mabl, more in the enterprise level. So yeah, these are examples of some of the most common low code tools. Let me see if there's another questions. Okay, yeah, if there are other questions, yeah, please write the questions and we will tackle them. And also, if anyone at the end, I will give my email, and you have more questions or you need you lost some notes and you want to ask them, please send me an email and I can give you more examples or answer the question. So yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Another option that we have as we grow to automate tests and test more efficient, right? Which is the goal. It's called hypercontinuous testing as a service, right? So hypercontinuous testing, it's getting some traction lately. So what hyper testing means is companies use existing tools. Companies, they become experts in tools, and they are kind of a hybrid between efficient tools, low code, no code, and we could say like it's not outsourcing, or more like a hybrid service in which a company comes and understands your environment pretty fast, studies your software, and they implement software testing and automation, a software testing strategy, and they automate and based on that strategy using their tools, but in pretty fast time. And then at some point, your company can take over the test automation when you decide. So it's kind of a nice mix of different things we saw, because these are experts on a tool that is super efficient, that define a strategy for you, and quickly in a few weeks or in a couple of months, they get you to a full QA strategy and full regression testing automation. So it's a nice hybrid of using efficient tools to automate testing, defining the strategy, and implementing it super fast. And continuous is because at the end you end up also having integration with your DevOps and having continuous testing, continuous results every day, every week, depending on your needs. So basically, it's in a nutshell, we can say it's a super fast lining test automation testing strategy that you can implement it right away, doing manually what needs to be done manually and automating most of the work. Yeah. The pros and cons of this one is no need to hire because you can go ahead and sign up with one of these companies and they just start working in the project and you don't need to hire anyone at this point. No need to install anything. So they will take care of the environment with the tool that they use for test automation. They will design the strategy, automate the test, and since they are experts and the tools are super efficient, the minimum time they have minimum time required. So this is fast. It's a good option to catch up with technical debt when you realize that you haven't been testing as much as you wanted to, and you end up with a nice strategy with a nice balance of manual and automated testing. The cons, the cost can scale depending on how large your product is or how complex your software is, because in this model, the companies use tools that are already developed or frameworks of automation that are already developed. So if the application is too complex, sometimes it might need some more tailoring and designing for your use case. So it can scale the cost. Yeah, because it will increase the time, it can scale the cost. So there are also some of the solutions that are provided here that have some lock-in risk. Some of these companies they create your automation super fast in 2, 3, 4 months, but then you are stuck in their platform forever. So there is some lock-in risk as well that has to be evaluated when these companies help you to have a good QA strategy and test automation strategy. So what is the best for me? So this is a summary table and that talks about the options we discussed, right? We have here traditional testing, more manual. Outsourcing is the second column there. Crowdsource, do it yourself, which is implementing open source or your own framework, and hypertesting as a service, right? So we can see there in the different areas we are evaluating: speed to value, cost, internal effort, skills needed, and flexibility. So in the ones that cost is higher, in the ones that the item we are evaluating is higher is red, the ones that is medium is yellow, and the ones that is a good option is green, right? So then if we go to traditional manual, we can see that it is pretty good for flexibility because it's good for flexibility because you are hiring your own team, so you have more flexibility on how you go about testing your software. But it is more expensive, it is slower, you need more skills. So this approach is better for technical software or extremely complex software that needs a good amount of expertise in the domain, and and that you need someone to learn your software at very low level. This approach is better for this software, but it's more expensive and slow. So we're talking, when we talk about technical software, maybe some health tech applications that do some kind of analysis, maybe some very complex machine learning applications that are non-deterministic at all. For example, those applications could be better fit if the software is in its majority non-deterministic, for example. This approach is best. So outsourcing, we can see that outsourcing has the pros of the skills needed. Outsourcing, the good outsourcing companies, they have any skill you need, so that's very fast to achieve. The cost is medium. The speed to value is slow because usually in the traditional outsourcing company, you take a few weeks to close a contract, a few months to put together a team or hire someone for at least 1 month. So the speed to value, then you have to train the person for your software. So the speed to value becomes pretty slow, yeah. So crowdsourcing, it has, well, outsourcing is good for companies that don't want to own their own testing zone. So you say, yeah, I need someone to do my testing, and I don't plan to own it soon. That's a good spot for that. For crowdsourcing, it's a good fit for skills needed. There is every kind of skill in outsourcing, in crowdsourcing. There is flexibility in the sense that you can scale pretty quickly from 10 testers to 30 testers, for example. So this approach is better for companies that require to test in multiple geographies and devices. So this is a good case for that. Do it yourself. It's speed to value. It's slow because you need to hire someone and train them, and then they need to learn the tools. They need to develop the infrastructure. So it's slow. The cost can scale. Requires a lot of internal effort, but it's very flexible. You can build basically whatever you want for your use case, but expensive and slow. This is perfect for companies that have a large team and can dedicate resources to the implementation, and also for complex software that any available tool, general tool, is not a good fit. It's a good fit, but again, it's slow and expensive. I see that there's a question. After this slide, I will talk about the question. So the last one, hypertesting as a service, and this one is the one we talk about. The speed to value is fast, relatively fast. Cost, it depends on how you are managing the project and characteristics of the software, but it's in general, it's always lower cost than hiring an army of QAs for your team. Requires minimal internal effort because it's 1 or 2 hours per week. The other company takes care of everything. And this one is perfect for fast-growing companies that don't want for fast-growing companies that want to catch up with technical debt and are not ready to hire a QA. So if your company says that, yeah, we already have a bunch of bugs, I don't want my developers testing them, I have 1 QA or no QA, I need some help to have very good coverage and regression in a few weeks, this is the best option. Let me see the question. Oh, I think we answer at the end. Okay. Yeah, we're at the last slide for recap, and then we will open for questions. So in summary, what we saw is the best solution. It's the annoying answer. It depends, right? We have this answer in a lot of things in life, but the best solution, it depends on the type of software and the stage that you are, right? If you have already 30 plus developers, maybe you have the team and you can dedicate 4 developers to testing, to do test automation. So maybe, right? So it depends on the stage, but we are talking about fast-growing companies. So let's talk about that. Another thing we learned today is the software QA needs to will evolve, needs to evolve, and it will evolve. So as we saw, depending on the phases that you are, you will need different types of testing until you have a full testing strategy that considers security, regression. So as you grow, your needs will evolve. So you need a solution that will evolve with you. That's for sure. And finally, so for fast-growing companies, hypertesting it's a good option because it offers fast time to value, a manageable cost that you can manage how fast you want to go with hypertesting. And something important is that you can take over these hypertesting projects at any point in most of the cases, because at some point, maybe you want to take over your test automation. It's pretty easy to transfer. So thank you. This is the core of the slides. That is my email. Please send me an email with questions, any questions that you have. I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, let's open the room for questions. I think there was another one. Okay, yeah, the recording. So yeah, any other questions in the room? Something that you would like me to go deeper? Okay, if no questions, then thanks everyone for joining today. Yeah, the recording will be available, so we will be in touch. And as I said, if you have more questions, please send me an email. And yeah, we might have other webinars soon. I hope you got some learnings from this webinar. Thank you, everyone.